What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube. And today I've got another edition of Tales from the Fort, where I talk about old horror films and I tell you guys whether they're worth watching, worth waiting for, or worth skipping altogether. I watched one over this past Halloween. I know we're in February now of 2021, but last Halloween I set out to watch nearly 30 movies that I had never seen before on top of the regular every year Halloween movies. And I found one that had been talked about for a long time that I never got around to watching. So today on Tales from the Fort, I want to take you guys back to my October and watching a movie that I should have seen a long, long time ago. It's become a cult favorite, and it is 2007's The Poughkeepsie Tapes. A lot of you hardcore horror fans on this channel will know this movie. Some of you guys may not. I heard about it back around the time that it came out, but I know it had a lot of struggle with theatrical release, stuff like that. It was initially made in 2007 as a found footage film through I think the Tribeca Film Festival, and it had like a long delay in theaters, like a 2 year delay, and then it didn't come out on DVD I think until like 2014 or 2016, something like that. It was like an eight or 9 year release after the film came out to even get a Blu-ray or DVD treatment because of the controversial nature of this film. And I know what you guys are thinking. Poughkeepsie Tapes is known as a found footage film. That would deter a lot of fans from it. So I just want to talk to you guys about this film. Probably will give spoilers away. It is 2007, so we are talking 14 years ago. So there will be spoilers on this channel if you haven't seen it here. But Poughkeepsie Tapes came out in 2007. It runs an hour and 26 minutes, a nice svelte runtime. It is directed by John Eric Dowdle, written by John Eric Dowdle and Drew Dowdle, I assume they're brothers, starring Stacy Chbosky as Cheryl Dempsey and Ben Messmer as Edward Carver. And essentially, this film is a found footage documentary style film about police going into this house in New York and finding something like 80 tapes or 800 tapes of all these different murders that this killer, who remained mysterious and stayed off camera or dressed up in front of the camera, recorded from abduction all the way through his torturing and murdering of all of these victims. Now, I don't think this is based on a true story, but it's presented as such. So I know what you're thinking. It's another found footage film. It's an oversaturated genre. It's not worth watching, but you would be wrong. This is one of the most worth watching found footage films, and probably the most cringy found footage film that I've ever seen. I think one of the things about this film that makes it so good is the fact that it's shot in a realistic manner. It feels like an actual documentary. Where things like this and Hell House LLC on Shudder, that series, where those films get it right and the other ones get it wrong, is this doesn't feel like a mockumentary. This doesn't feel like a spliced together kind of farcical documentary. This feels legitimate. We're going back and seeing spliced in footage from the videotapes where it's a first person shot from Edward Carver's point of view as he's abducting and stalking and killing his victims in brutal fashion. We're seeing a bunch of interviews from the police officers. We're seeing them discover the tapes and discover the victims' bodies for the first time, and the acting feels legitimate. It feels like it's kind of an improv film in some ways, but also scripted tightly enough where it doesn't feel like it's meandering. A lot of times when you get improv dialogue, it starts to trail off and the actors forget what they're saying, and you can tell they're trying to improv. In this, it feels like they're speaking extemporaneously, they're talking and saying things they would naturally say. The dialogue feels very natural, the acting feels natural. And I will say this, if you've got triggers in terms of like abusive relationships, toxic relationships, self-harm, stuff like that, this might not be the film for you because this does feel gruesome. This is one of the few films that I found myself kind of cringing, kind of waiting for the next big jump scare, but they're not standard jump scares like you'd find in a James Wan film. They're jump scares in you're knowing that the killer is coming out of somewhere and you know he's going to torture these people, so you're actually kind of looking away because the torture feels realistic. So if you like gore and you like torture films with the safety of knowing it's a film, you may enjoy this film. But if you have a lot of lines when it comes to torture and kind of going over the line in standard horror gore, this one might be a little too realistic feeling for you. Again, I want to praise the acting. I want to praise the writing of Drew Dowdle and John Eric Dowdle. I have not heard of them aside from this film. I wish they had gone on to do more things because this is creative. Even for 2007, I would say that the found footage stuff was overdone once Blair Witch hit in the 90s. But the way they did it, again, was pieced together so nicely. I want to give the editing a lot of credit here. They edited this film together where the footage felt grainy. It felt like the newscast felt like actual newscast, but nothing was lost. The quality of the film was not lost. The editing was pieced together so nicely on top of the acting and the dialogue that it put you right in the situation, and you're feeling the victim's pain. When Edward Carver has these victims tied up, or he's stalking them in the house, or he's letting them bleed out, you're seeing the wounds look really good. The effects are great, and you're feeling the pain of the actors as they're yelling or crawling or doing whatever they're doing trying to survive. You feel like you're in the house waiting for this killer to inflict his next move, and you're cringing away because these poor victims are enduring a lot more than a regular horror film, which is where the realism comes into this. So I want to give the editing a lot of credit, along with the coloring and the way the film was shot. It feels very authentic, where a lot of found footage films do not, or a lot of films just rely on jump scares or apparitions or whatever. This relies on a man who's just sadistic. They took this plot line in different directions as well. At one time, you think Edward Carver's being caught, Ben Messmer's character, and they wind up catching somebody because of a semen DNA, I believe, and it winds up, I think, not being him. It winds up being one of those things where they think they caught the guy, but he was framed. So it happens around 9/11, so he gets off, he gets exonerated, and nobody really knows that he's getting off. The story gets buried behind 9/11. And then eventually they do, the story, the main victim of the story, the one that gets tortured the most and the story is centered around, is Cheryl Dempsey, played by Stacey Chbosky. And you're seeing the family kind of in tears and losing their daughter. I think the boyfriend gets tortured as well. You're seeing Cheryl Dempsey do all she can to survive and being tortured after a long period of time. And then when the police finally get in there and get her body and she is rescued, she's the one victim that actually survives. She has the old captor syndrome. She falls for Edward Carver, saying that she's in love with him and he loved her. That's why he kept her alive. So she actually, after all the torture, she's mentally broken and has become unstable and is just completely out of it. And she's genuinely scary as she's waiting for her love to come back. Then she eventually commits suicide, and Edward Carver exhumes her body, digs her body up, puts another tape in the coffin. So he then reunites with her body. So this twisted love story in a way that has an aspect of like backwards romance and toxic romance that feels all too real, is just a squeamy feeling after this poor person has been victimized for so long that she actually falls in love with the guy. And in a way, he goes back and makes her his number one prize. So it's a really sick ending. And then, of course, you see at the end of the film another victim getting tortured and being about to be murdered. So this victim is on the loose. And the people that are watching the documentary, you step outside the documentary, and the audience that's watching the documentary and the cops say they know that Edward Carver is going to watch this documentary and be present for it. So they're still trying to hunt him down as it goes on, and they're banking on this documentary getting to the killer and being part of solving the murder. So the realism comes back in at the end. So you got some nice twists. You got some twisted, realistic, kind of scary backward romance. You have some captor syndrome there. You've got a lot of deep, dark emotions. So again, if you've got triggers and this kind of thing feels too real for you and it feels like torture porn to you, you will not enjoy this film. But if you like documentary style, if you like the Saw kind of what they call torture porn, if you like elongated scenes of torture that feel realistic and good effects and good editing and good acting, you will like this film. I liked it. It was a film that I'm glad I watched, and I enjoyed it for the film, and I enjoyed all those aspects that I talked about, but I also cringed and looked away and felt too involved, too enthralled with this movie. So for that cringe factor, I give it a lot of extra points for originality, for putting the viewer in the environment and keeping it open-ended and making the documentary, again, feel realistic. So that's what separates this movie apart. I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it for what it was, but I'm also sickened by the fact that I enjoyed it, if that gives you any idea. So if you liked this film in 2007, what do you think? I say 8 out of 10. What do you say? Tell me in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like this video. If you like me going back and reviewing old movies and new horror films and other stuff, like my movies are coming on this channel and other ones coming soon, my acting videos, my sports videos. Tell me in the comments below what you want to see. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Take care.